Good morning. It's always lovely to be here. Always thanks to Victor for inviting me. It's a pleasure to connect with each of you this morning through the camera lens. And in fact, it does give me a lot of pleasure to know that as anxious as we might be to convene in person, that we are doing it through the camera lens and keeping not only ourselves safe, but doing it for the greater good of our community and keeping each other safe. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. So thank you for being here with me in this virtual format. One of the things we often say here at Temple Buddhist Center is that we are exploring Dharma without dogma. And Victor referred to it this morning about we're here trying to explore these wisdom teachings without getting caught up so much in a particular sect or a lineage. And in fact, in my own experience, lineage has been one of the ways where I've kind of struggled with the dogma part that can come up in spiritual pursuit. And for those of you who may be new to Buddhism and are wondering about this term lineage, it's sort of like, you could think of it in more the Christian tradition of a spiritual order, like if you're familiar with the Catholic faith, Franciscan or Benedictine or Jesuit. The lineage is just, can often be traced to a particular teacher and certain traditional practices and approaches and beliefs around Buddhism that can be traced, and sometimes the argument is that it's an unbroken chain. Some traditions, it's a little fuzzier, but that's essentially what a lineage is. And there are a lot of benefits to practicing in a lineage. It can be very clarifying, it can create a wonderful sense of community, lots of, having that tradition, having a clear way to practice, those can all be wonderful benefits of practicing in a lineage. But unfortunately, there can also be some sort of tug of war, us versus them thing that arises around that. And there, again, if you're new to Buddhism, then don't be surprised to think that you've heard of all the lineages only to hear about a couple more next week. There are plenty to choose from. And this has come up for me, this issue of lineage and what's my lineage throughout my spiritual practice, but in particular in the past couple of years. And a couple of years ago, I was facilitating a silent retreat, a morning retreat at a lovely building over at 43rd and Truce called Heart of the Dove. And the front of that building houses a really great cafe. If you're in the neighborhood, check it out, wear your mask, be safe. It's called Equal Minded Cafe. And so it was my tradition after facilitating this retreat to go hang out with the cafe owner, get a coffee and whatnot. And I was doing that, and the owner said, hey, there's this Buddhist study group that meets here, and they're over here right now. You should introduce yourself to them and tell them about your retreat. And I thought, of course I should. Thank you for this tip. So I waltzed over very confidently, just prepared for connection and community and getting to know some new seekers on the path. And so I introduce myself and explain what I'm doing there and say, tell me about your group. And maybe, memory is a little fuzzy, so maybe not the exact first question, but very much in the top 2 or 3 was, so, what's your lineage? And I actually felt this sense of panic. Number one, because I didn't have a good answer to that question. I didn't have a line that I could just give. And I also just felt the panic of thinking, if I don't give the right answer, are these people going to still talk to me? Are they going to accept me? And I think we all know as human beings, we don't like to be rejected. That's not what we're about. We're about connection at our fundamental being. We're designed to be social creatures. And so I managed to give some sort of muddled response about, well, you know, I've practiced in a lot of stuff and I train a lot with this guy named Shinzen Yang, and well, he's from the Shingon lineage, which is an offshoot of Vajrayana, but he's also practiced a lot in Rinzai Zen, and it really didn't get better from there. So after muddling my way through that, the person who asked me this question kind of, you know, was taking this in with this sort of stern attitude and said, well, this is what we believe, this is what we study, and this is how we study it. This is our lineage. End of story. And I thought, well, okay. Made some more awkward small talk, and then basically extracted myself from the situation as calmly as I could, and thought, well, that didn't go so well. Maybe I need to figure out what's my line. If somebody asks me what my lineage is, maybe I should have some sort of response. But it, you know, I thought, I should probably think about this a little bit more, but it wasn't really a guiding question in my practice. And I think part of that is because I consider Temple Buddhist Center my formative spiritual home, is where I learned to meditate over 20 years ago. So I've always just had this very open approach, and studying with Shinzen sort of led me to that approach as well, as you can guess from the not even complete mentioning of the influences I listed on him. Well, fast forward just a couple of months later, not very long after this, I had a meeting with another meditation teacher and practitioner in the area, and we had had conversations before, we had practiced together before, and really seemed to vibe well. And so we were meeting to discuss a possible collaboration. And so we, you know, how are you doing? How are things going? And somewhere early in the conversation, this person said, you know, I've never asked you, what's your lineage? And this time, instead of panic, I actually felt defensive. I thought, well, what is it to you? Do you think, like, we've been practicing together, if I give the wrong answer, does that mean I'm not good enough to collaborate with you? And I recognize, of course, now that that defensiveness was still in response to fear of rejection. It was just coming out in a different way. And I had a slightly more graceful variation of the, I've practiced in a lot of stuff, I train a lot with Shinzen Yang, he's trained in a lot of different ways. It's all good, maybe, that's my line. And so we ended up not collaborating, but I don't think that it was because of my lack of clear response on the lineage question. I think it was due to other things, and that's fine, and we're still in touch and colleagues. So, but I did realize this question started to kind of percolate in the back of my mind and sort of turn itself over. And so last year, I decided to take a Dharma name with Shinzen Yang last summer. And for those into this kind of trivia, my Dharma name is Ko-Shin, which stands for luminous authenticity or light and truth, however you want to interpret that. And Dharma names are very interesting because they tie in very much to this idea of lineage. And your Dharma name usually is a signifier. It comes specifically within a lineage. And in my case, because I have the name Shin as part of mine, that directly connects to Shinzen, whose name directly, and it goes all the way back to the founding teacher of the Shingon tradition. So Dharma names can be used in various ways. They can be used to represent that in a particular lineage that you have been empowered to teach, and that's when you receive a Dharma name. It could be a more general, just a signifier of you have taken vows and agreed to practice in a certain lineage, and at that time you receive a Dharma name. But with Shinzen Yang, and he discusses this openly and explains that just as he has really consistently honored and valued wisdom in whatever form it has been found, whatever technology humans have discovered to awaken to wisdom. Taking a Dharma name with him really signifies that spirit and practicing in that spirit. And that was actually why I decided to take a Dharma name, because I felt that that really reflected the way I have been practicing and hopefully will continue to practice. And so in some ways, it helped clarify my relationship to lineage by taking a Dharma name with Shinzen Yang. In some ways, it didn't help at all because, like I told you, the lineage discussion around Shinzen, it's like, oh, well, yes, and then I learned so much from this Catholic priest named Father Fred Johnston, and then when I was studying with Suzuki Roshi, it just goes on, which I think is a great thing, and that's also one of the reasons I love practicing here at Temple Buddhist Center, is that openness, that exploration of Dharma without dogma, not getting caught up in lineage. And so with all of that in mind, maybe you're listening to this and you already are very much established with a lineage and feel very comfortable with that. And we have several lineages that practice here in collaboration with, under the auspices of Temple Buddhist Center. And that's wonderful. That's fantastic. But maybe you, like me, have spent some time being confused about this lineage question. And so whatever the case may be for you, I'd like to invite you to claim a lineage. And in fact, I'm not actually inviting you to claim it. I'm inviting you to remember that you have always had it and will always have it. And it's a lineage that you carry in every cell of your being already. And that is the lineage of this unbroken life force, this unbroken connection of human experience that we all carry with us. And it's the millennia of human experience, moment by moment, that has built up and created the wisdom traditions that we have available to draw on today in the present. And so I invite you to claim that lineage and know that you've always had access to it and you always will. And to know that you can claim it in all of its sometimes darkest depths and most illuminated breath. And to know that you have always been and will always be welcome here.